Well, what is up, everybody? I am Darby Ellis Lewis Wilson, and with me is Chris Anonymous, and we are here to talk about the fourth Friday the 13th film, the final chapter, which is ironically just the fourth chapter of a very long,
not even halfway,
and an ongoing book, hopefully.
Not even halfway.
Yeah. So, Chris, good to see you. Happy. Not quite Friday the 13th. We're doing this on Monday the Monday the 9th, 7th,
9th. Monday the 9th. Yeah. But it's the same
matter.
week.
It doesn't matter because we're talking Friday the 13th.
Look, every time there's a Friday the 13th, there's a Monday the 9th. You couldn't have Friday the 13th without tonight.
That's right. That is right. So Chris, I got a question for you. You do a lot of skinny dipping?
No, I do not.
Are you part of the Polar Bear Club?
Unfortunately, no, I am not.
Well, do you have any interesting skinny dipping stories?
I don't care. If it's a good story, it's a good story.
What?
you asked if I'm interested in skinny dipping stories.
Oh,
no, I don't care.
I asked you if you had some, and you're like, man, I don't care. If it's
I thought you said no, I misunderstood you. And no, I have no skinny dipping stories.
Oh, well, neither do I. What is up, Gory Tiger? Thanks for joining us in the chat. I'm going to tell you my skinny dipping story. I was probably in the 5th grade, and we went, the adults went on a hike to the top of Laramie Peak. I'm not much of a hiker, so I stuck down toward the base there, and there's a little pond, and it was me and the boys. You're all daring each other, and so they're like, "I'll go in and skinny dip. Go do it, man," because that's what like young guys
That's what
do.
A dare is. Yeah,
I did it. I was triple dog dared, and that means you got to do it. So I did it. And I ran out and like splashed around in the water real quick. And then I start hearing from above this, "Woo, nice tan." And there were like some girls like up on this cliff, like looking down, watching. And I ran out of the water, and I tripped over my underwear trying to get it on. They saw my little wee-wee. It was very embarrassing. And that's all I got for a skinny dipping story.
That sounds like out of a movie.
That sounds like it could have been out of this movie, which I feel like is basically it's just some skinny dipping with murder in between. I know we've had it in Friday the 13th prior, but I think this one is the one that sort of solidifies that you have to have it.
If you got a lake, you got to use it.
Yeah, it's in all the movies. This movie, I don't know if you knew this or not, Chris. It's the first Friday the 13th where they reused old sets for the movie. We see it at the beginning with the old barn, but I believe some of the other parts of the set were from other Friday the 13th.
But it's not the only one, the first one to reuse footage from previous films.
No, which I do want to get into later in Schlock, because it confirms a theory that I've had since the very first one. And so I was really stoked to see the recap on this one.
Nice.
But yeah, I think it's really interesting. And I wish they would have leaned into this more. And maybe they have. I don't know. We haven't gotten to the other
We'll get there
yet. But I think it's like such an interesting idea that if you knew that you were going to just create these somewhat cookie cutter movies, because this really is the first movie where it's like Jason dies, comes back to life, kills a bunch of skinny dipping teens, dies, comes back to life, kills a bunch of skinny dipping teens, rinse and repeat, ad nauseum. And so if you knew you were going to do that, just like build a fake Camp Crystal Lake set and just
reuse it all the time.
Reuse it. How can we use this in cool different ways each time? I think that's really smart.
And then when you're not filming, make it like this Disneyland type thing for slasher films.
Right. Yeah. Like you can stay in the cabins.
Oh yeah. For extra money,
man.
they can chase you around and try and kill you.
Man, they missed out on that. I wonder if we can buy the sleepaway camp. I think that still exists.
Yeah. That's a different kind of ride, but yeah.
Yeah, different ending for sure. So this movie, it cost $2.6 million to make, and it made just under $33 million. So
that's a successful movie.
I think they're having diminishing returns at this point, but man, that is a great return on investment. And
yeah.
I think horror films today, maybe films in general today, need to sort of refigure out that formula, that you don't need to spend $500,000 on a movie only to make just a little over $500,000.
Right.
Or $500,000, $500,000 is a very cheap movie.
No,
The Avengers for $500,000,000, 500,000.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm terrible with numbers. Chris, what do you think is probably the most searched question about Friday the 13th, the final chapter?
Is it the final chapter?
Is it? No, it's not. No, I mean, that is not the answer to the question, and that is also not the most searched question.
What is
really
the most
surprised this?
Yeah, what is the most searched question?
Why is it rated R?
Well, that's pretty obvious.
Blood,
Yep.
boobies,
Yep.
bad words.
Yeah.
The
three B's.
The unholy trinity, the three B's. So I don't know why, but I try and get some factoids in here, the things that the people want, the things that the people are looking for,
right?
And there you go. That's why it's rated R. Let's see. I'm just going through my list here of interesting factoids. What this show is we like to talk about schlocky movies, horror movies, sci-fi movies, indie movies, low budget movies, whatever. We love it. We don't care if it's bad. We're going to treat it like it's Citizen Kane. We talk about the good, the bad, and the schlock, what we liked and what we didn't like. And then we talk about what are the things that really caught our eye. The schlock section is just kind of our open discussion.
Free for all. Yeah.
It's a free for all. So if you're watching this, you're probably on YouTube. Please like and subscribe so that you can come back. Feel free to jump in on the conversation. And if you're listening to this on Spotify or iTunes, please rate and follow us and come back for more, baby. But before we get into the good, the bad, and the schlock, we like to talk about the people who are in the movie, where they came from, and where they've gone.
Yeah.
And a little segment called Web of Schlock. Chris, take me away.
We'll start with the director, Joseph Zito, I think is how his name's pronounced. Before this movie, he made a horror film called The Prowler.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. A little cult classic there. And then after this, is kind of interesting. Missing in Action and Invasion USA, both of those are Chuck Norris vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
And then Red Scorpion, which is Dolph Lundgren. So he kind of switched from horror to action. And then he's had a couple things here and there ever since, but that's kind of like that late 80s to mid 90s kind of run.
Okay.
So
and Prowler was also titled Graduation Day, wasn't it? Isn't that the premise? It's like their graduation dance or something like that. Anyway, it falls within the spectrum of the holiday-esque horror movies. But apparently, so I don't know much about old Joseph Zito personally. I've never met him, but it kind of seems like he was a big dick to work with.
Okay.
So the stuntman playing Jason in this movie, Ted White, asked to be uncredited because he said he didn't like the movie, but it sounds like more of what he didn't like was the director. It sounds like they clashed quite a bit over various things.
Yeah, what little I read is that it took him decades before he was kind of okay with it, and then would go
Yeah.
to some horror cons and things like that.
Yeah. Well, and Corey Feldman apparently had a problem with the director. Everyone thought he was a real bratty kid, but I guess it's because he was just clashing with the director a lot. This movie was filmed in December,
Ooh,
so you can imagine how cold the water would be and running around outside would be. And apparently, people are getting hypothermia, and I guess it was just. It sounds like it was a miserable movie to make,
yeah,
and
I get
Zito
you.
is a big part of that.
I get you have to shoot when you have to shoot, but you should really, if you're doing a horror movie with a lake and skinny dipping, you should try not doing it in December.
Right.
Unless
Maybe.
you're in like Australia or something where it's going to be warm. But
Right. Right.
yeah, no, that's interesting. I hadn't read a lot about that, but a little. But yeah, you know, I think you get that a lot. You hear a lot of like certain actors are really hard to work with, certain directors,
Mhm.
certain producers. Just I guess the lesson is don't be a difficult person,
Yeah. Right.
right?
Well,
Because I
I
mean, the whole point of these schlocky movies is to celebrate stupid, silly things, right? You're supposed to be having if you're not making an A-list great movie that's going to change the world, then you're probably just doing something to have fun and to make something good. And I think that translates when your people that you work with are happy and you treat them right.
right. Like I can see it making sense if you're on one of the $500 million movies where you're dealing with maybe a lot of eccentric personalities, very arrogant people that
Right.
they are the top of the top, right?
Or
And so
just
they need their trailers and their
yeah,
bowls of
yeah.
Skittles.
Or if you have like a $2 million shot, right? And you want to get it right and you get stressed out and then you take it out. I get how you could, be grumpy, but
Well, from our personal experience in making our own short horror films, I 100% know what it's like to
to get
to
grumpy.
get grumpy and be very stressed out. But hopefully I'm not making actresses stand naked in freezing water for hours on end. I make this pledge here and now that will never happen.
Drawing the line. Well, maybe if he would have been good to work with, and I don't know, maybe he was fine and it was just a misunderstanding. But let's move on to the writer,
Yeah.
Barney Cohen. Um, he has several movie credits. The most interesting things. Right before this, he wrote an episode of Masters of the Universe,
Okay.
and right after this, he wrote an episode of Thundercats. So in that cartoon world, which is awesome. He created and wrote a TV show in the 90s called Forever Night, which I'm vaguely aware of, but I want to try and go watch it.
That sounds familiar.
It's a vampire who's like 800 years old, and he's a detective in Toronto trying not to be a vampire and trying to solve crimes.
Okay.
I'm
I
like, I'm
can
in.
dig that.
That is schlock. That's perfect schlock. And then he was involved, it seems like a bit. He was an executive producer. He wrote the TV movie and he wrote several of the episodes. And it looks like he was fairly involved in Sabrina the Teenage Witch in the 90s.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah. So it's kind of all over. He wrote a movie in the late 80s, another horror movie called Killer Party. So, I mean, he's just kind of kids, 80s cartoons, 90s staple, teenage TV, horror movies, it's a little bit of everything.
Okay.
Um, and then another behind the scenes notable person is Tom Savini, which we've talked about
Mhm,
him
mhm.
a lot on this show. Um,
The King Savini.
yeah. And evidently, I think he and the stuntman who was playing Jason in this had a little bit of clashing in the beginning from things I've read, but then
Mhm.
were able to work it out and be friendly partway through.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because if you look at some of his other special effects credits, Savini, he worked on The Prowler.
Mhm.
So he must have got along with the director to come back. And then he worked years later on Red Scorpion with the same director.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, people just, some people just don't click with other people. It's interesting.
Well, and I think this movie, in a lot of ways, is a bit of a love letter to Tom Savini in that the character Tommy, he's into making
Very much
masks.
so.
Right.
Yep.
I read that he was originally supposed to be an inventor, but they're like, we got to make him, into monsters and doing special effects, right?
Yep.
Which I think makes more sense for the end.
It totally makes more sense. Yeah. Yeah, no, I like that part. So now let's move to some of the actors. Tommy, of course, Corey Feldman, quintessential 80s kid, man. He is in like some of my favorite 80s movies: Lost Boys, Goonies, Stand By Me, The Burbs. I mean, he probably is the 80s kids icon.
Yeah.
I can't think of another one. Corey Haim, when they were doing the movies together, also kind of gave me that vibe, but I think Corey Feldman totally gave me that 80s kid vibe.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't old enough in the 80s to really like recognize people in movies yet, but once I got older, I mean, it's Corey Feldman is the face of 80s kiddom to me.
Yeah, 100%. Then we have Crispin Glover, who played Jimmy, and man, he is also this great actor who just appears in all these strange movies. He was in Back to the Future, so another quintessential 80s movie. He was in Charlie's Angels, this strange movie called Willard that you should check out. But I mean, he appears in all sorts of like great quirky things, and he always brings a great and quirky performance.
Well, so tell me that it sounds like you know more about him than I do. Is he a weirdo in real life, or is he? I think I was watching something, and they were saying like why he wasn't in Back to the Future 2 and why he wasn't in Charlie's Angels anymore. And it sounds like maybe he's just kind of not willing to put up with studio bullshit.
That's the story I've heard as well. And is it true, or is it just kind of like the PR vibe of, like that of the presentation of what you want to present to the world as being eccentric, even though you really aren't? So,
I mean, he fit into that weirdo role perfectly.
Yeah,
this for sure.
So he's either a weirdo, which is awesome, or he's a really great actor who acts weird, which is also awesome. So, Judy Aronson played Samantha. She was in Weird Science, American Ninja, Beverly Hills 90210. And last, I want to bring up the twins, Camilla and Carrie Moore. They both come from soap opera. So Camilla was in General Hospital, and Carrie was in Days of Her Life, and she also had a part in Once Bitten. But I mean, if you look at any of the other kids, teenagers in this thing, if you look at the credits, a lot of them, they have those little things of horror that start creeping up over the last decade. Little short fan films, which we've seen a lot of in the last decade or so, where you see these kind of scream queens and kings, and just, they're going to go to these horror cons, and then someone's going to say, hey, do you want to appear in my low budget horror film? And so you start to see these really strange and cool horror credits later on. Yeah. So if there's any character I didn't mention that you really like, go look them up, because chances are they're in something else that's pretty cool over the years.
Yeah, nice. All right, Web of Schlock, baby. We talked about this a little bit before the show. Who has the most good and who has the most bad? Chris, I think you like this movie more than I do. Not to say that I don't like this movie, but I think that you have more positive things to say about it. So
yeah, I mean. Here, the first thing I'll say is it is out of 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 is my favorite. Now 5 and 6 eclipse 4, but we haven't got to them yet. So it's one of those things where each movie gets better because it gets more quintessentially Friday the 13th. Mm-hmm. The kills are bigger. Jason has his mask again. It's just more of everything. But if we're gonna do what's good, I liked the campfire recap. I know in part 3, I complained to you that I hated the beginning where we just rewatched the end of part 2.
Right.
But they cut in all 3 movies, and it was to a campfire, and it really sets the tone of like, he's out there, and this is also just a ghost story. And we've talked about the campfire tale before, so I
Mhm.
really liked that. I liked.
And you love a good campfire recap.
I do, I do, and they did it. So the cast, I really liked the fake jump scares and toying with us leading up to the inciting incident. Like, it really kind of doubles down on that, and it could not work, but for me, it totally worked.
Like the hand falling down.
Yep,
Oh,
the
yeah.
hand falling down, and then, the doctor jumping out and scaring her, and then,
Mhm.
yeah, just all the little fake scares.
Yeah, that whole beginning was definitely in my good. Like, even though it ate up so much time of the
Mhm,
movie, like, I mean, like a solid 15 minutes, I
yep,
I really enjoyed the whole mortician thing. The dude's eating, he's a slime ball. It was just a really fun sequence.
yeah, it was. And they're getting killed, right? So you're just
Right.
waiting for it, and they keep denying it, and then finally happens. Corey Feldman and Crispin Glover. I already said cast, but they both stand out. You can tell, like, special actors, like, there's something extra that they have that you're like, yeah, yep, I get that. The other thing I really liked, and this is good and bad, so um, I'll say this, and then if you want to throw in your good, and then we can kind of move into the bad.
Okay.
Um, so at the beginning, the teenagers felt like actual 80s teens, more out of like a comedy than a horror movie. Like,
Mhm.
the one is complaining about his girl leaving him, and the others has the computer, and then you have Corey Feldman who's has the masks, and they're talking about things in their life that aren't just related to going and drinking and skinny dipping and things like that. Now, that all gets thrown out the window pretty much after act 1, beginning of act 2, and they all just kind of devolve into your classic
Oh, oh,
stereotype
yeah.
trope of just drinking horny teens who are gonna get slaughtered. But that's what you came to see. But I really liked I even that beginning, it really made me care about these characters more. And again, you lose that quickly, but it felt like, no, these were real people with concerns outside of the horror movie, and so when they're gonna get slaughtered, I'm gonna care a little more, I'm gonna worry a little more about them. The first 3 movies didn't some of them had it to a degree, but this is the one where it felt like it was written by somebody who kind of had the pulse on, like, teen lingo and that whole 80s
Mm.
pop culture,
See,
and
I
so
would disagree. I put that in my bad.
see, I really liked it, but what's your good?
So my good is the characters. I do like some of them. I like the stereotypes of them. Um, Teddy. I think that there's some very iconic moments in this movie
Mhm,
that are brought on because of the characters. Corey Feldman doing his slasher routine, um, and Teddy when he's watching the stag film and he's stoned and he's sitting there. That the dude just has a memorable face,
he
right?
does, and he's
While
laughing,
he's
and it's yeah, yeah, that's a great,
like
great, character moment.
and for him to get up and go to the screen, he's like talking to it, and then he gets stabbed through the screen, and he's like blind by it. That's a great sequence. I think
Yeah,
that's yeah, it's beautiful.
mhm,
In fact, it's something that I think whenever I think back at the other Friday the 13th movies, I'm always like, what movie is that scene in?
yep,
Because it might be one of my favorites. Rob, I think, is a really good, however underutilized character in the movie. Talk about the underutilization a little bit later, but I think that they really missed out. The franchise in general has really missed out on giving Jason a Captain Ahab, right? A character that is on the hunt to get revenge on Jason. We see it in part 9, Jason Goes to Hell. I can't remember the guy's name. That he's like a bounty hunter or something. But people mostly hate that movie,
Right.
but love that guy. And
Right.
I think Rob could have also filled those shoes, but he doesn't get
I
a
mean,
ton
he's
of
out
time.
there to hunt him. He wants
Right.
revenge for his sister. So I mean that is the character, but he's definitely underutilized.
Right. I like the character. I think he's underutilized. And going back to other characters, Trish. So I'm going to say that Trish, as a final girl, I do like her. And I'm saying that because on the Friday the 13th message boards, I see it constantly said that she is the worst final girl because she's not particularly interesting, but I feel like it's because she's not really given time to shine. Like, she has this
No.
interesting family dynamic, but a lot of it is taken up with the teens next door and their awkward relationships. But I mean, she is willing to stand up to Jason. She smashes a TV over his head. She gets the machete and she's like, "I'll give you something to remember." Like, she's ready to take him on to protect her little brother. I think that's very commendable, and I think that's a good final girl. And then also, last good is the stunts. Like, I think there's some really great practical effects done by Tom Savini. There is a ton of window crashing.
There's so much window crashing.
It's like they did it in the first one, and then they ended it in the second one with that big window crash, and then in this one they're like, we're just going to defenestrate left and right.
Right, I was going to say, with Trish, she defenestrates herself.
Yeah,
right. That's some final girl gusto right there. Like, she isn't effective as a final girl because she doesn't kill him, but she's got the spunk to do it, right?
Right.
And she's also protecting her brother, and she's splitting the duty of final girl with final kid.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's a brother sister combo, which is cool to see, and to see them both live.
Right. And that stunt where she throws herself out the window, so that obviously not the actress, was it Kimberly Beck?
Right.
Obviously not her. It's a stunt woman and it's in a controlled environment. But when I saw that, I was like, oof, like that is a hard stunt. That person actually threw themselves out a window, out of a candy glass window or whatever, and landed on the ground 2 stories down and had all this wood fall on them. I'm like, that is a great stunt.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
So yeah, that's my good. Let's move on to bad.
Move on to bad. Yeah.
Let's hear your bad, and then I'm going to tear this apart.
It sounds good. There's lots of little bads. So, first one, the abrupt Jarvis family intro. Like, we should have seen them a little before, like them driving to that place and then cut back with the nurse and the doctor, like, or had like a subtitle of like the next morning, or it feels like we're starting another movie again after that whole long intro. And I think through editing, cross-cutting, or just a little rewrite, you really could have introduced that family, because they're very interesting. They're the most interesting part of the film, more so than the teens, except for Crispin Glover's character.
Well, him and Teddy, man, I think they're
Teddy's awesome. They're combo. They're the two that felt like John Hughes to me, and I'm like, I want that in this movie.
The other teens are like totally, well, literally dispensable.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. But those guys, they're the main characters, I feel like, of that group.
Yep, and I love them. And okay, some of the kills are kind of boring. Like, there's a lot of just knife through the neck.
Well, interesting enough, this is the only Friday the 13th that doesn't have machete kills, other than Corey Feldman at the end. Yeah. But Jason doesn't use it, and that's why I feel like this movie, it should be the pinnacle Friday the 13th movie, because we have 1 where it's the mother, we have 2 where he's got the sack head, we've got 3 where he finally gets the mask, but it's halfway through or towards the end.
First where he comes into his own with the mask.
And this is the first one where maybe he's he's zombie Jason now, or
Right.
maybe like we don't really know. We can get into that later. But
Right.
it seems like all of the ingredients are there
Um,
except for the machete.
my biggest bad is Tommy didn't utilize the masks and or FX stuff. Yeah, he kind of shaves his head and pretends to be the young Jason at the end, and that you can argue that because of his FX training, but like the masks and the little thing that grabs, I mean,
Like he should have been punching that thing on Jason while he's trying to
or
get through the
setting up
door.
some kind of decoy with the mask or doing
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
yeah.
Like, and again, that's kind of tough because when does he realize that Jason's there? Eh, But I mean, you set all this up in the beginning, and it's so cool. I would have liked to seen that utilized somehow in the climax. And then this this is kind of a complaint for the series as a whole. And so Tommy, this is Tommy Jarvis, who is probably the second most important character in the Jason mythology, right?
Mhm.
And so, years later in the other films, he's kind of like the arch nemesis. He's kind of like trying to find him, trying to stop him. But in this one, it's like, what if Jason was really killed by him and Tommy takes on the mantle and becomes the new Jason? Because that's how this ends. That's the vibe you get, is that he is so traumatized by what he did
Mhm.
and he's already looking like the young Jason. Like, I don't know if I would prefer that universe, but that's what they set up. And I'm like, it'd be kind of interesting to see if he would have become
Well,
Jason.
it's weird because they set it up again in the next movie.
Hmm.
I will say I'm 100% happy that they didn't do that. I mean,
Yeah,
I think we've seen from the latest Halloween movie that just kind of doesn't sit right.
yeah, I'm glad overall that they didn't do it because I like him as the antithesis to Jason, but it feels like you were really setting that up and then you don't go there.
Yeah, that they, yeah, it has almost zero payoff.
Yeah, and I mean, so and there's lots of small little bad things, but let's let you jump on this. Tear it apart,
Okay.
sir.
Well, so my number one bad, and this is, I think this goes firmly into what you were talking about, but it goes starkly against what you were talking about, and you're good in that. I think that this is probably so far the most underdeveloped Friday the 13th movie, and that's saying something, because, like I said, we are getting into the Jason comes alive. He kills a bunch of teenagers. They kill him. Comes back alive.
Mhm.
The rinse and repeat thing, and the thing is, we spend a lot of time on people who aren't particularly interesting. The Jarvis family is the most interesting part of this story to me. Rob is the most interesting part of this story to me, and you have to have the teens, right? Because that you have to have your cannon fodder for the movie.
Right.
But man, like, who are they? What are they doing there? I went back and rewatched it. I think the only explanation we get is that some teens have rented the house next door. It's an Airbnb or something.
Right. It's just a group of it's just your group of high school misfits, driving over from the John Hughes set. And the two characters we talked about that we both like are the teens, Crispin Glover and can't think of the other's name. His
Teddy.
Teddy, his best friend. They are what I wish all the other characters were. All the other characters are totally underdeveloped. What I really wanted was more of those two, but I wanted each of those teens to kind of have that moment. So
Yeah.
I agree with you. It kind of focuses on, well, but it needs to focus on the cannon fodder because those are the kills. That's what you're going to do. So like, I wish
Man,
those.
I think they could have just had him in the cabin and then just been cutting back and forth between the kills and
Well,
the
and
Jarvis family
a missed
without.
opportunity would have been like for one of them to like befriend Corey Feldman's character Tommy, and for another, like if Rob was there, but he was kind of the outsider because he was secretly hunting Jason. Because the small romance between Rob and Trish is really meaningful for like the 2 seconds it's there. The kiss on the cheek,
Yeah.
like it totally works for me. You're like, oh, I could see them making it if it weren't for Jason. They're
Right.
gonna be just fine.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think we just have two different movies that are clashing against each other.
We do, and if you would have made some of
we
those
could
other
have had
characters,
with Crispin and Teddy, we could have had Abbott and Costello fight Jason. You know what I mean? Or we could have had like this interesting family drama fighting Jason. And I think they just clash against each other.
I like the idea of like that Jason wouldn't have just attacked the Jarvis family. I like that it's the teens coming to the rented house next door that brings Jason to them.
Well, I mean, I don't know. That another problem I have with this movie, and it's not so much a problem, it's just a big hanging question for me, is what is Jason's motivation in this movie? Because in the second one, it's that they're again attempting to reopen the camp. And the third one, it's because he's hiding out in the barn and they won't quit jacking around with the barn. And so he's got
he's got 3 movies to get a taste for killing teens, bro.
Now he just likes it. Well, it's funny because Rob, when he first meets Trish, he's like, "Hey, are there any teens around here?" He's like, he says it in like the creepiest way possible.
Right?
Any teens around here, or kids or something, man? I'm a long way from my
Jason likes
order.
killing them, so I'm going to use him as bait to try and trap Jason. Yeah. I mean, you see this in other horror movies, but it's the idea of the sinning teenagers who are going to be slaughtered because they are promiscuous and because they have drugs and drink and are just, rebellious, right? And that's what brings the entity, the slasher, to slash them. And so it wasn't really developed in this film, but you said like it's 2 films that are kind of like merged together and neither really quite work. And I agree with you, but I still like the idea of like the rowdy teens next door, because you are just so close in proximity, they're the reason that your nice, wholesome family is going to get attacked as well.
Yeah.
That's an interesting idea to me.
Yeah. I think that's the other movie I was talking about. I think you can definitely have that in there where it's the story is told more from an outside looking in, right? And then we eventually go in with Jason, but we don't need all of their story development. Give us the fodder and give us the deep story development,
right?
With the family. I mean, I'm not even sure why or how those people are friends or around each other. There was a part in the movie where I was like, are Teddy and Crispin, are they ghosts? Like, have these people actually even talked to them? They were in the back of the car, having their conversation, and then the whole time they're just talking to each other, and then finally they interact,
right?
Like toward the end, I'm like, do they exist?
The other thing that was a missed opportunity again is you have these 2 stories and you don't bring them together enough. Just like in part 3 with the biker gang, like I would love to have the family team up with the kids, especially if the mom's upset that the kids are bringing bad influence on her son, but then she has to save one of them. Like, and again, the other thing that we don't get is that no one really knows that he's there killing until the very, very end. And I want people running and strategizing and trying to do something and trying to get away and still be slaughtered. But yeah. So what else you got back?
We got like you said, didn't really find out anybody is getting killed until the end. I thought it was really interesting in this movie that there's like no big body reveal, like there has been in the past movies. That's, I don't know, that's just a portion that I like, where the person, the final girl, gets the realization of what's going on.
Right.
I think she sees 1 or 2 bodies.
When she goes next door, she sees Crispin Glover kind of nailed.
Yeah, when she tries to leave,
right.
But like, where did Teddy go? Right, he's not in that room anymore. Let's see. Here's what I thought was very strange. These people the family live next to Camp Crystal Lake, or they live to next to Crystal Lake.
Right.
The camp may be on the other side. I'm not exactly sure where they are. It's apparently like the lake the size of one of the Great Lakes. But I just thought it was so weird that we remember this time frame. This has been basically straight through since the second movie.
Right.
And more or less, I think you can account for a few different for a few days in between.
Right.
Because we see that the mom is reading the newspaper that the murderer's body is missing, and so there's enough time to print a newspaper about it, and then later Trish says that, oh no, somebody stole the body. So there's enough time for the newspaper, there's enough time for a rumor to get around.
But let me guess. Why aren't these people locking all their doors, loading up on guns, and even getting out of there? Like, the body count is so high at Crystal Lake. Why are we staying here? Is that kind of the...
Yeah, I mean, she says, a psycho could just walk in, and they're like, no, we're out in the country. No, where a psycho has been walking in and killing people
for 3 movies straight.
Yeah. This isn't like 3 movies though. This is like there has been a solid week
of just murder week. It's Shark Week, yeah.
And now the body is missing.
Well, but she's split up or going through a divorce with her husband, and they have the lake house, and that's all they can afford to live at. So they're making their ends meet. They're doing the best they can, Darby.
Is that what it is? Is that they're living at their lake house? They don't explain that.
Yeah, she says it to Rob. It's very, very like tossed to the side, but something about the father not being in the picture, and that's why they're staying at the lake house. I can't remember if it's like a separation or divorce, or they're not getting along.
Right. My last bad, Tommy's plan, we talked about a little bit. Tommy's plan is stupid. And here's why. Here's why I think it's stupid. One, it doesn't make sense time frame wise that like this masked psycho is chasing my sister. I think I'll just go cut my hair like with scissors a little bit at a time, right? The time frame is insane. Right. But the biggest bad to it, I think, is that the articles that he's reading when he gets the newspaper articles, they're from the first movie. They're from the mother. Now, had he read a recent news article about the survivor of the first string of kills, how she distracted Jason by dressing up as someone from his past.
Right, because he does the same thing that she did, but he's dressing up as a version of Jason instead of the mother.
Which I love. Like, I think that is a great, like, I don't know, that's a good foil for Jason to mess up,
confront himself. Or his mother. Yeah.
I don't think it was set up well. So, but there's tons more to talk about, and we are running out of time. Let's move into Schlock and see what the things are that stuck out on us. For me, I do like this movie, but there's just as many things in this movie that I don't like as the things I do like. So,
I mean, that's kind of like all the Friday the 13th. I like this one most out of the first 4 because I get more of it. But yeah, none of them are great films, but if you like what you're getting, you get more of it in this one. So so that's why it's in my good column overall. Schlocky stuff. Crispin's dance. That's when I first saw this movie, that's what made me fall in love with the movie. I'm like, what is going on? And then they change it to some old timey music that no teenagers in the 80s would listen to.
Yeah, you guys are losers. These teens are losers,
right? Except for him, man.
He was ready to party.
Jimmy was ready to party, and Teddy was pretty ready to party. I mean, Teddy should have had his computer back. He should. But Crispin's dance is so iconic. It's one of those moments that you're like, okay. And again, it's a small little, like, that was totally evidently how he danced in real life at clubs. So he just added it in. But it's things like that make you like, okay, this is a real teen.
Yeah, and that's what I mean by one of those iconic moments. I mean, it looks so weird and funny, but it's like you said, it's a great character moment. It's something that it solidifies kind of the awkwardness of this guy,
Mm-hmm.
but the bit of charming that he has, like
Yeah,
bit of charm that he has,
it makes me love this character.
it makes you feel comfortable to want to dance like a goofball too.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, keeping this PG, but the dead lay, I thought was brilliant, because you're saying that he's dead. He's going to get killed. You're saying at the beginning of the movie that it's the double entendre of like,
Well,
okay, this is what he's going through as a teen, is he wants to be he wants to perform well,
wants to
right?
be a stud, man.
Correct.
Yeah.
But what is actually saying over and over in head is, hey, this guy's already dead and he doesn't even know it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And it's just such a teenage thing, such a slasher thing. I thought it was brilliant. That was like little subtle things. It's not even subtle, but things like that just really hit home for me. I'm like, yeah, that's hilarious. That because they keep calling him this, and then he gets killed because he was that. So that meta, that little bit of meta,
Right.
I really enjoy in slasher films.
It's like, oh man, this guy's not gonna make it.
Yeah. The masks and the creature effects I loved. Again, I loved him so much that I wanted him to come back, because he could have had some of the, like, what if he put that alien mask on and scared Jason? Probably totally wouldn't have worked.
Or he could have set up decoys, or
set a booby trap with the thing grabbing him, and then Jason, the guy, the mask falls out and Jason chops the mask instead of them, and they can get away.
Yeah.
They were so cool, and it was such a fun, like, character moment of like, oh, I like a kid who's into making masks and is talented.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What
do you got?
Got a question. The hippie, the hippie gal on the side of the road.
More memorable than most of the teens.
That to me is one of the most memorable kills. Like the
because the banana.
Yeah, coming out of her mouth, and she squeezes like, ah.
That is my second.
That's imprinted in my brain.
That is my second favorite kill.
But do you think
this movie
he's going to meet up with what were the stoners in the last movie? Chili, and like maybe she was part of that crew, but she doesn't know that they.
Yeah, I think she was just trying to get to Canada.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean,
is that what it said? That's what her sign said? Oh, man, I don't know. But I assume that she got it right because she was in proximity to his mother's.
Yeah.
Well, to his mother's.
Oh, his mother. Yeah. Very
I assume he's like making a beeline, right?
Yep.
He's going somewhere, and these people just so happen to be in his way.
On his path.
Is what I feel like the motivation is.
That probably is the motivation of he has to go from point A to point B, and if there's a house in the way full of teens, well, he should probably kill them all and then continue on his way.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
So what I want to talk about, we talked about the intro, the flashback a little bit earlier. I got to get this out because I thought this was so important in the movie. In our first review, I said, and I thought I was being slick. Apparently, this theory has been going around for a while, but I said that Jason is alive and a grown man in the first movie, and he is the accomplice to his mother's killings. He is helping her out. Now, obviously, we know that was not the intention of the first movie, right? They had never even thought of him as being an adult when they created the movie. And so getting onto the Friday the 13th Reddit and stuff, people are asking this all the time. And I tell you what, man, fans, not just Friday the 13th fans, but fans of anything in general are terrible. And I'll tell you why. Because there are two types of fans. It seems like there are the fans that, like, if you don't see it on screen, they're like, how did Jason do this? If we didn't see it, how did he eat? Like, we never see him eating. Did he take a crap? I don't know. We don't see it. Like, if they don't see it, it doesn't exist. And then there are the other fans that if you ask a question or maybe propose a theory of some kind, they just say, it's a movie. That's why. It's like, can we please meet in the middle of we don't have to see everything, but we can like draw conclusions about how things happen.
Right. Yeah.
So my theory was that Jason is the accomplice in the first movie, and in this movie it seems that the filmmakers are intentionally trying to say that as well.
Okay.
So in the flashback when they're doing the camp scene, it's Paul, I believe. He's saying that some people say they've seen him, and then it does the flashback to Steve Christie where he's out in the rain, and he says, "Oh, hey!" Now in the first movie, I think it's kind of pretty obviously Mama Voorhees,
Right.
but that movie or this movie is implying that that was Jason that he was
Mhm.
talking to.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think the filmmakers themselves are trying to like build a backstory here.
I think they're trying to build a backstory, and I think they're also trying to again, that whole campfire tale where it's like someone's telling the story. So like, which version is it? Well, who's to say? It's all this oral tradition passed along. It's an urban legend. And so one person tells it this way, one person tells it this way, and no one really knows. So I think if they aren't a 100% trying to promote your theory, they're at least putting the possibility out there that that theory is just as valid as any other.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say I think he was there with his mother in that scene because we don't see
Yeah.
it. That's
Yeah.
what I'm going to put out there.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that.
What else do you have for Schlock?
Well, my favorite kill was the shadow kill of the twin. You just see the silhouette on the side of the house where Jason comes up
Oh
and stabs
yeah.
her. I'm like, that is so simple and so effective, and there's no gore, there's nothing, but
Yeah.
it's stylistically so cool, and I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. I want more of that. Like, I enjoy all the bloody crazy kills, but the a little more thought into it and just the effectiveness of what you don't show. I thought
Right.
of like, oh, that's, and it's raining kind of. I just loved
Mhm.
that. And then
Yeah,
the
it's
last,
like a flash of lightning, I think,
yeah,
that
yeah.
happens.
I'm
Yeah.
just like, oh, that's really cool. I could have a whole movie of a slasher where you don't get a whole lot of blood till
It's
the very end
it's
because it's
all
just,
shadow kills.
yeah, shadow kills. And my last schlocky thing, it's just so bizarre, is the old time nudie film that they find. I'm
Which
like,
apparently is a real film.
it's a real film, Betty's Bath, and I'm like, huh, like, when did that come into play? Did someone have a copy of that and they're like, this would be hilarious if we show it? Or were they
Right.
on set and they found it and they're like, yeah, let's put it in? Like, it is such a bizarre
It's
choice.
free.
It's hilarious when Teddy's watching it. And again, it's that whole idea of teens um, erring in their ways and then getting killed for it, right?
Mhm.
But it's such a bizarre thing.
Right.
Just out of nowhere. And like, that is an iconic scene where he's watching it, he's laughing, and then he goes up close and then gets killed through the projector or through this screen.
Mhm.
But it's still just an odd choice. And there's a lot of just odd choices in this film. Crispin's dancing, and overall there's a quirkiness to this Friday the 13th that the other three didn't really have.
Mhm.
And
Well,
quirkiness goes a long way for me.
yeah. You mentioned teens paying for their sins. So this is something I thought was kind of interesting. Again, I feel like it's something that took up too much time when we could have had a much tighter movie. But they kind of set up two different final girls.
They totally set up two different final girls.
So we have the girl that's with the teens. I can't remember what her name is, but she's not going to go skinny dipping with them. She's shy, right?
Mhm.
She's being set up to be the final girl, and this is kind of where we again, we're talking about, or we've talked about in the past, how these rules are getting established for
Right.
slasher
I mean, this
movies.
is still 84. So this is when you're watching these films, these are where the rules come from. Like all
Right.
the rules in Scream, it's from these movies.
Exactly. Well, and so she could be the final girl. However, she hooks up with her not quite boyfriend in the shower,
Hmm.
um, and then she becomes fair game.
Correct.
Right. It's
Which
so
is,
you get this
yeah,
false final girl, and then she shows, you broke the rules.
right. I love the idea of a false final girl. Because you totally like, she gets thrown in the lake against her will. She's not sure what she wants to do. Yeah, and and she's like in stark juxtaposition with the twins, who are obviously there to party and get killed.
Who the double mint twins? They just come out of nowhere, and they're like,
Right.
"Hey, a group of strangers."
Like, are they ghosts?
Yeah, they're
Right.
ghosts for the ghosts.
Right. And so, I mean, yeah, it's the final girl. She would have been a final girl had she not uh, got off the path at the end, and then we need a new final girl. And so I think Trish totally steps up because she was never meant to be the final girl. So she
Mhm,
just she did what she had to do.
yeah.
What happened to the mom?
Uh, cut scene, I guess.
That's what I heard. Yeah, that's what I
She's
read.
she's dead in the bathtub. Same thing with the dog. Who knows what happens to the dog? Lot of loose
Do
ends
we
in this movie.
do we ever see Jason killing animals in any of the other three movies?
I think that it's maybe not shown, but heavily implied in the second one that he killed. Was it Muffin, or at least an animal that looks very similar
Yeah.
to the little dog. But the dog in this one is very clearly alive.
Yeah.
When it went out the window. It looked like it also threw itself out the window. Gordon.
Yeah. I can't remember, but I think part 5 pretty much piggybacks off of this. It doesn't take place right afterwards. It takes place many years later. But it's also Tommy Jarvis.
Yeah, if he's, say, I don't know, 10, that's a good round number in this movie. He's like 16 or 17 in the next movie.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think we have one more movie before, like part 6 is my favorite, but that's like almost self-aware and almost becomes parody.
Yeah. So I got two more things I want to talk about, and then we'll start wrapping up here.
Yeah.
I want to go back to Rob real quick.
Okay.
This is just another thing that I think was set up that doesn't pay off. I think it would have been very interesting, and this goes against the idea that I love the beginning morgue scene, because it would be very hard to do with this. But I think it would be very interesting if he was set up to be the killer, like not set up as in framed,
right?
Set up by the movie to make us believe that he's the killer.
Right,
now.
like Jason's actually dead, and this guy's just using the name to go kill. Yeah, that would have been interesting.
Right, because they do that quickly when they introduce him. Right, they have to kind of jump out. We see his boots and his flannel.
Yeah, again with the fake jump scares, which I love. But yeah. You know, another thing that's interesting about him, now that you bring him back up, is he's very much like not underdeveloped, but totally like the father figure in the dynamic of the Jarvis family. He's the missing
too.
right. Well, he wants to be with the daughter, but like the male presence, the adult male presence that has been taken away from that family.
Yeah,
and he goes in to try and save them. Like that part I love, that he's trying to help them, and they're he obviously gets killed trying to save him. But that's one of the few times, again, at the end of part 3, when we have the guy jump out and attack Jason so that she can get away a little bit, is where you have the biker gang help out. But other than that, these separate parties just really don't cross over with each other.
Yeah, ships in the night.
Right. But with Rob, he comes up, he steps up, and he tries to become part of that group dynamic, which is really interesting.
Yeah. So again, just a missed opportunity that I wish would have gotten fleshed out more, and that we could have seen maybe in other movies.
And what his sister was killed in which film?
Second film. His sister was Sandra. So that's the girl we see at not quite the very beginning, but it's like her and her boyfriend. They're on the phone, and his pickup truck is getting towed as a gag.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, it's that girl. I had to go look it up. It reminded me of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, where Dennis Hopper is looking for the Chainsaw family because it's his nephew, I think, that was killed in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a great character. And so maybe that's just what I wanted for this movie.
Right.
Machete sword fight.
A machete sword fight would have been awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, the idea of like setting up the final girl, the false final girl, or the guy who you think is going to go toe to toe with Jason and then gets easily killed. That can get old too. Like it would have been awesome if Rob would have like squared away and still get killed, but really go toe to toe with him for a while.
Well, I guess he was supposed to not go toe to toe with him, but apparently people felt that his death made him look very weak. Like that he was supposed to be built up as, you know, this strong, tough guy who could go toe to toe with Jason. But then he just like gets totally brutalized. And the intention was just to show how merciless Jason is, but it wound up undercutting Rob as like a tough figure.
Correct. Yeah.
So last thing that I have, so when I was watching this, I paused it every time a newspaper article came up, because I was really trying to like get a sense of the timeline and yeah, when things are happening and what people are saying like in universe.
Right.
And I saw a headline that I thought was really interesting. It says, "Murderer strikes cafe." We've never seen that, correct? It says, I think husband and wife were killed. And I think maybe it's in reference.
It's a reference to the
beginning of 3.
The beginning of 3, which maybe there's a cafe, but that's more of like a grocery store to me.
Right. And so I'm like, oh man, is there another story here? Is there something else to be told? I don't know. Let's get the message boards on that one.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're probably referencing the beginning of part 3, but grocery store and cafe are different. So yeah.
So, all right. Well, those are all of the schlocky things that I saw in this movie. It's all the good and the bad that we have. I'm sure we could actually talk on and on and on about any movie, but we will start wrapping it up.
Yeah. So next Friday the 13th is not till next June. So
in June. So soak this one in.
And
go
there's
back
only
and watch the playlist if you haven't seen the other ones.
And there's only one next year. There's only one Friday the 13th next year. So you really want to be there in June with us, and you want to.
Well, let me know if I come out here. This is the first time we've done a second show in the row
for a while,
like once a month. But next week we will be doing our Christmas special.
What are we watching?
We are watching I believe the final installment of the Silent Night, Deadly Night series. Each movie gets further and further removed from the original movie, and this one is so far removed that it's just called Silent Night. So if you're looking it up, it's free to watch on Tubi, I believe. Silent Night 2012. It's got the Santa with a flamethrower on it.
Great image.
So we will be joined by Lance the Obscure Movie Guy, all the way from the Lance the Obscure Movie Guy channel. We love having him on. It should be a great show. And
so yeah, we'll see you next Monday.
All right. We'll see you, everybody. Yeah, here's that music. Play it out. All right. Bye, everybody.